really just it almost ends like a Scorsese movie.
Yeah.
Like, how many bodies are there?
Yeah. Well, and also like all right, so I should follow through the plot. They find the gold. There's kind of like the Treasure of Sierra Leone, who I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's an old like Humphrey Bogart movie of like there's these cowboys who they go into the mountains to find this gold, and then they all kind of turn each other because they all want the gold for themselves. It never really gets fully that, but there is a little bit of like that like gold craziness that kind of overtakes the group of like.
Well, yeah, they all go insane.
They all kind of go insane. They all kind of like
backstabbing, cutting.
Think the other ones are going to betray each other.
I like when they find the gun.
Yes. Otis had carried a gun with him because
he was given it by his
girlfriend, and it was really just like to protect himself. And when they find it, it's like just the implications of having a gun on you in that situation.
I mean, it makes sense. It's like you rob a bank with 4 guys, and then 2 of them kill the other 2, and then one of them kills the other. It's like, you know.
And then it's also just like when the landmine removal, those 3 characters come in and they help them, and then Paul's like immediately is like, we have to tie them up because they're going to want the gold for themselves, and like we don't want to we wanted to split it 5 ways. We didn't want to split it
not gonna lie, I was kind of with Paul on that.
I mean, I don't know.
Just because that one French guy was such a fucking cockhead.
Yes.
At the bar.
Yeah.
You know? That was the same guy that was at the bar.
Yeah. No, it was the same 3 people who were at the bar.
Yeah. That guy was a fucking asshole.
And there is kind of this...
I don't condone tying people up and stealing things.
There is very much this, that gold craze that you get of... But then... they're kind of attacked by this group of Vietnamese villagers, and it's never really said in the movie, but I kind of got a hint that they were from the same village that was originally promised the gold. So you kind of have this like moral dilemma of like, well, who really like does it rightfully belong to? Because it was kind of promised to the Vietnamese people, and they are really stealing it. I mean, they're stealing from the U.S. government, but they're also kind of stealing from the Vietnamese people who are victims. How did it originally
get there?
So
I feel like they never really made that clear.
So the plane that was carrying it, that was going to deliver it to the Vietnamese people, is shot down.
And they find it in the helicopter.
And they're in the helicopter, and their job is to recover the gold.
Right.
And they decide they're going to use it for themselves because the United States have given them nothing. But if you look at, I mean, the entire movie is, it's not just about generational trauma. It's about just broken promises from the U.S. government of there's a gold cast, or there's like a chest full of gold, and these black soldiers who have been screwed over by the U.S. government, who has been promised things over and over again by the United States government, say, we're taking this because it belongs to the United States, and they keep promising us stuff, and this is our way of getting back at them. Why should we protect their stuff? But at the same time, you have these Vietnamese people, these South Vietnamese people, who did fight against the North, who put their lives on the ground, and after the United States kind of left Vietnam, were almost abandoned. I mean, the one character, Tien, who's like their guide, talks about like, my father fought for the South, and then when the United States left, he was put into a communist re-education camp and then tortured. So it's about the United States government's broken promises to 2 different groups of people who are now fighting over this gold, and both of which think that it belongs to them.
Yeah.
And you could have showed those Vietnamese villagers as just straight up like bandits. of Roberts, but like you're actually kind of sympathetic towards them because they talk about the I might mispronounce this, the Lao Ming massacre, who is like this terrible massacre that happened in Vietnam, where this entire village of civilians, women and children and all, are just massacred, and they're
man, that was fucking.
And they show clips from it, and it's horrible. They show a lot of like real footage from Vietnam.
They stayed on the image of the baby with a blown off face.
Yes.
Which I was like, I could have done without that, but I guess that's the point.
There's so much just brutal images from the Vietnam War, and it does show like, well, how do you get over that? Like, how
you don't.
How do
you
we
don't get over that?
Like,
you can't get over that.
You go to Vietnam, and how do you expect them not to still be mad at you?
Dude, look at the fucking hissy fits that we as Americans throw over the stupidest bullshit, wearing a fucking mask, and you have a meltdown in Walmart.
Right.
That's what we're doing as Americans. How would we fucking react to our child's face being blown off? You know, you start to understand why countries around the world feel the way they do about us, specifically during specific, different military situations that have occurred, which are essentially atrocities that we're committing. Yeah. I mean, we're not equipped to deal with that as we Americans, maybe past generations, but even then, a lot of them are fucking, quote unquote boomers. I know they don't like that word anymore, but at one time that was called the boomer generation. You're throwing a fucking, again, I have to go back to this. You're throwing a hissy fit in fucking Walmart because you can't put a mask on to buy a fucking pack of cigarettes or whatever the fuck.
But, it's same, it goes back
and we're expecting these people to get over fucking blowing their relatives up.
But it goes back to that character, Paul, who the
fucking...
you can continue.
It's just like, think about that for a second.
No, I know, but I say
it's actually pathetic.
It goes back to that character, Paul, who I say, like, the conflict of the movie takes place in his head of, like, this is the character. You said it before, he is the American embodiment. He really is. And he's not over what he had to go through in Vietnam, but he expects the Vietnamese to be over it. When they're on the boat and one of the guys at the market is yelling at them because he's like, you killed my mother, you killed my father. And he's like, he's basically saying, like, you should not be mad at me for that. That had nothing to do with me. When they talk about the Lao Ming massacre, he was like, that had nothing to do with me. And yet he still, like, hates the older Vietnamese soldiers for something. Well, you don't know if you fought them in battle. They could have nothing to do with that.
I really like how Spike Lee decided to do that, because he plays it off as if the disagreement or the friction initially is over buying a chicken, when it's really not about that. It's
not about that at all.
Yeah, that was good.
And the drink at the bar is not just about buying them a drink. It's saying, like, hey, we're good now.
Right.
And it's very interesting. But it's also just like, Paul is not over the fact that he had to, like, obviously he probably went through a lot of terrible things in Vietnam, but you're not over that, but you're expecting them to be over the massacres that happened in this country.
I understand. Trust me. I understand everyone who is fucking traumatized by war. I would never hold it against. That's why, again, going back to the beginning of the episode, like, just like, you would hope that someone in Vietnam currently wouldn't hold those feelings against American citizens like you and I, who had nothing to fucking do with anything. We have to understand where people are coming from, when because of our government's presence in their country, it has created generations of trauma, as you put it. And the best way to start working towards that is to fucking try to avoid war at all costs.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Which is obviously for the best. But
I think.
I don't know that you can undo it. I don't know that you can undo it currently. I think you need to stop that next. Just
Maybe. I think that just taking someone needs to take responsibility. You have to accept the fact that my country did this to your country, and I keep bringing up the French woman and her landmine removal charity, because it is taking acceptance of like not only did my country do this to you, but my family had a plantation here where we exploited your people. So
yeah, but that depends on people admitting things that people don't like to admit, like privilege and like institutional racism and all the things that are currently lighting this country on fire.
Right.
You have to kind of like get to that moment where you're able to understand like that you live in an environment, and you're a product of that environment. And again, though it's not an indictment on you personally. People seem to not be able to grasp that concept.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey man, this is not a personal indictment, okay?
Yeah.
But it's not a personal attack by asking you to just take notice of what's going on around you,
right? How
you got to where you are. It's not saying you don't have troubles. It's not saying that you don't have hardships. It's not saying that you have it. Your life is a walk in the park. But people just seem to not be able to handle that for whatever reason. And they take it as an attack.
And I think what the Five Bloods what the character Paul needs to understand is that the understanding that they need to come to is that just because I don't want to say just because. Even though like these people's generational problem is a direct result of you being there in the 60s, that does not mean that the trauma you suffered is lessened. That doesn't mean that you don't have the right to have your own trauma and go through your own thing. And I think
that's exactly the point. That's like someone of an older generation. Black Lives Matter. What about me when I was, in the 70s and my dad died and it's like, I know, man, that must have sucked. Like, I'm sorry your dad died. That was I'm sure it was really fucking tough.
Yeah.
Like, but what is that? That's now supposed to negate something about racism? Like, it's like, that doesn't work.
Right.
It's not taking away from your experience.
Yeah. And then in the end, the money from the gold is given to, Black Lives Matter and the landmine removal. So that's why I kind of think of like that's what Spike Lee is saying is the answer of basically like activism and charity, and that we can use
and not repeating mistakes.
Yes, and not repeating mistakes, but also that like we can use these organizations to undo the trauma of past generations.
Yeah, I mean,
as much as possible,
exactly.
to an extent,
to try to work towards
yes
that.